what was your behavior like in elementary and middle school?
Not great. I just was very aggressive and I loved to fight. And I always had a chip on my shoulder and I liked to pick fights with the guy who was being an asshole to everybody.
Hello, everyone. It's Monday and shit is wild out there. And welcome to not the season finale, but the series finale of Luke, Who Is Your Father? I'm your host, Ricky.
This is Jules.
And this is Kenny.
And you heard that right. It might feel a little bit abrupt, but this is the series finale of Luke, Who Is Your Father? We are hanging up the towel. Some people are just not built for this, and we are three of those people.
We're tired.
It has been so much fun, but I want you all to know that are listening to this, podcasting is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and as we've reiterated many a time on this show, we do all suffer from somewhat crippling anxiety. And when you're running a podcast, you always have something to do. Like, you could always be posting more on social. We could be pitching for sponsorships. We could be pitching for awards in hopes of ever making any money off of this. And it's just not going to happen.
And I think there's something to be said. I think that the first season was absolutely incredible. We will never forget it. It's like the whole thing is a core memory. We got to do one season, get it out there, which we would have never done ever. I'm not kidding you. We would have never talked about those things. We would have taken them to the grave. And then we got to do one beautiful season of absolutely incredible guests. And I think there's something to be said about going out while you're on top and just feeling really, really good about the body of work, the way that it is. But we will definitely miss you guys.
There are so many amazing podcasts out there that tell these stories. So you guys can just run over there. You can listen to Family Twist. You can listen to NPE stories. You can listen to DNA surprises. There are even more than that where we haven't actually talked to the host. Kendall, what are your feelings about the series ending?
You know, I truly enjoyed every little bit of it. I feel a little bit guilty because that's who I am. But I truly think that people who podcast need to be very, very passionate about every aspect of it. And I personally hate social media with a fiery passion of a million hot burning suns. And just that aspect alone, I can't do it anymore. So truly appreciate everybody for being so supportive and so amazing. And it was a great experience, and it was really cool to find out that we are totally capable of running a business and setting it up and everything. But yeah, I just am
Ready for the swan song.
Yeah, ready for the swan song.
Why do you feel guilty?
She feels like she's quitting something.
Is that it?
Yeah, we're not quitters, but I think it's not.
We're not quitting.
No.
It's just finished.
Yeah, it's just done.
No, it would be quitting if we fucking sucked at it.
It would be quitting if it was the middle of the season,
which we debated.
And we actually went
over
further. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are some highlights for everyone?
It's so hard. I still to this day, having both moms on was so amazing. I think every single guest that we've had on this season has just brought so much to the table as well. But as far as real highlights, having the moms on, being able, that was, and it wasn't that long ago. It feels that long ago, but this was, I don't want to sound a certain way, but this was a really big deal for me personally, because of everything that you and I have been through, Rick. And so it touches me to say how much it has meant to me as far as just building my relationship with both of you. So that has been ultimately the highlight for myself.
Yeah, I think I will always remember like getting ready to record our first episode. That was such a fun day. And then finding out at the end of the episode that this was going to be like really emotional. Again, like you said, just a core memory. The Today Show was the most fun, just to see the inner workings of how a big network show looks like that, and to be able to claim that accolade with so few episodes out in the world is kind of a big deal. And then to bring Keith on and have so many people be able to hear that situation where you do find your sperm donor and you do reach out and it can go well, really touched a lot of people. That was like the most feedback that we ever got, was that it was so touching to hear how positively he reacted. So that was a highlight. Coming down here and getting to spend time with my sisters in Jules's house was just a really bonding experience. It was all a highlight, really.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I would be remiss to say that the Today Show was not the ultimate highlight for me, especially because I think we were kind of all dreading it a little bit, and it just turned out to be the most amazing experience. It was so much fun. And then also, I'm just really proud of like the diversity of our podcast.
Yes.
Like all of our guests were from different backgrounds, different races, different sexual orientations, and it was just so fun to bring the mic to those people and give them a platform to kind of speak their truths and that kind of thing. So that was amazing for me.
Yeah. And despite how much we all hate social media, interacting with 99% of you was so fun. You have all been so kind to reach out, tell your own stories in the DMs, say the nicest things, really become a part of the little community we built. We'll leave those things up. Who knows what will happen to them, but we really cherish you.
That just reminded me of another highlight that I had, which was, and I'm trying to figure out how to word it, it allowed us to connect with people that we have not in a really long time. I think that people might, that from my past might think that I'm dead, which is fair. But we've had people reach out from like our elementary school. We have had like parent friends with my mom reach out. And I had a friend from my roommate in college reach out. I haven't spoken to her since college. And when I was in college, I was going through a hard time. My dad had just passed away, and I had seen on her TikTok that she recently lost her father, and it made me so sad. And it was like happenstance that she ended up reaching out to me and saying that she had been listening, and we were able to reconnect that way. So some of the reconnections, that is that a word? Reconnections? It is today.
Make it a word.
That we were able to make was really, really special as well.
Yeah. After we put out the episode that we were all like dreading putting out most for some reason, because it was like so difficult to record, when I talked about my alcohol poisoning, I had what I probably inaccurately in my memory would have recounted as my high school bully, or one of them, reached out to me with an incredibly, I wish I had my phone, but a beautiful long message that just said, I love what you're doing. It's so important. I have a daughter, and I remember that happening, but I just couldn't digest how big of a deal it was because we were so young. And so for you to go back and put words to that, and for us to all be able to think about it more cerebrally and reflect on it, I'm so sorry for what you went through, but what you're doing is so important. And she thanked me. And that was like a really beautiful moment for me, because when you think back on something so negatively and then realize that like we've all grown up and we're all people, that was so beautiful. Thank you, Hannah.
Probably healed some wounds, because I think when it's like when we think back to other people growing up and going through things that we went through, we don't think like, oh, that person was such a fucking idiot or whatever it is. But I think when we think back on, when you lay at bed at night and think about the stupid shit that you've done in your past, and you think that people, when they think about you now, are thinking about you in a negative light because of those things. And it's hard to give yourself the same grace that you give other people. So I think just all around kind of circle the circle of life.
Yeah. And I would want to encourage everyone. I obviously have been like the noisiest about this podcast. My face is on like a lot of things. I'm sorry.
Or is it?
Or is it Julianne? I came really close to blaming Julianne on the internet today for a fight I started again. But
People wanted us to post our mugshots at work, and I posted yours.
oh, perfect. But I want to reassure you and encourage you. The more vulnerable that you can be with people, every time that I've done that and really shown up as my whole self and said things that I would think would make people think really poorly of me, they have always ended up loving me more. So if you are ever considering telling your own story in that way, if you should share the thing that you feel makes you feel dirty or less than, if you can share it in a way that helps other people, people will always love you more for it. And I would encourage everyone to try and have an experience like we had in terms of putting it all out there.
Yeah, you bringing it to the table is unbelievably empowering.
And I think that was really obvious for you both too. Like, I know Jules, you were scared to be perceived negatively because I sort of at least inadvertently pigeonholed you into like having to take a lot of the negative things that happened on yourself. And you were really nervous after those episodes that people would be talking about you in a negative light. And that literally actually never happened one single time.
No one called me a slut.
And Kenny, you were the resounding fan favorite.
Absolutely.
No, like if anyone would ever go on and read the comments, but me.
I read them. I know.
I don't read them.
You are unequivocally the fan favorite.
You are.
Oh, well, that's nice to know.
Turns
And
out.
people just yell at me and Ricky for sounding alike. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do.
Yeah, I was very recently called insufferable. That's fine. And now I quit.
That has also been hilarious. It has been an actual joy to see a little bit of trolling. So keep doing it. It's so funny.
No, and to then, at least for me, know that those things really don't matter. Like when you read those from strangers on the internet sitting behind a keyboard, and I could actually get to the point very quickly where I was like, well, this isn't my friend and it isn't my family. So, haha, I think is really important to grow that skin and not let the bastards get you down.
Yes. And here's to the Scum Sisters.
Okay. For our final question of the day, who was your favorite fan?
Greg Souza. Period. End of story. Greg has been... Greg is one of my coworkers, actually, and I know you guys have picked up on this, but I'm very competitive. So when Greg came onto the scene at work, I kept him at an arm's length for a while, and he actually works really hard to like claw into my good graces, and he has ended up just being such an amazing friend. He is flying out for Thanksgiving here soon, and I think it was partly because he wanted to make that really grow that relationship. So right when the podcast first came out, every single day, every single week, he would let me know that he was listening, tell me what he thought, ask me questions, give me shit about, my debauchery. And it was now obviously we have become much better friends over the course of recording the podcast, but it was such a stepping stone in our relationship, and I consider him one of my great friends now, and I can't wait to see him soon. It has to be Greg. Ricky, who's your favorite fan?
Oh, since
It was Lynn, wasn't it?
Okay. You know what?
Let's do it.
I have a few favorite fans because I'm the one who was like, for the most part, manning the social accounts. Sydney Seimer.
I know Kendall just can't do it anymore. I'm just kidding.
Sydney Seimer, she was the one who she had told a story that we put on. I believe it was for the when she met Jack Black, but I could be mistaken in that.
Yes,
we wished her happy birthday. Doesn't matter the technicalities, but Sydney pumped us up in almost every Instagram comment section. She was amazing, and there was at DIMORT You are a beautiful photographer. You also pumped us up in every comment section, and it meant a lot coming from you because you were obviously an accomplished woman who ended up making up like the most of our demographic. And it was just so surprising to see you there every time. And you were just so amazing and lovely. And you tried to make it to our one Patreon happy hour and couldn't. But we really loved you. But yes, a favorite fan, Lynn. I know you are listening to
We
this.
know you're listening, Lynn.
This is Ricky, by the way. You somehow managed to be a fan and a troll at the same time, all the time. And just know we saw every single comment and we came away from this treasuring you and thinking that you are hilarious.
We will never forget.
and we will
Lynn.
never forget you.
Tenderoni.
I have a couple. I think Jonathan Cheddar was hilarious. He would text me and like debrief after every episode. It was very cute. So really appreciate his support and his feedback. And then I think I have to say, and I don't remember her name or if she gave her name, but the lady who told us that she had started listening in her chemo sessions and that she was going to save or share it with her warrior sisters. That one got me.
You just sprang tears into my eyes. Yes.
So I really appreciated those kind of, that's a highlight for me, is being able to have touched those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the most difficult part about leaving is so many of you did reach out and say that we had changed your life in some way, which was all we ever really wanted to do aside from change our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much. And obviously all of our friends and family who consistently listen.
Of course.
You're
Yes,
our
obviously.
favorite, our favorite fans, but the ones who were fans just because they were fans.
Exactly.
You guys were all so amazing.
Because you didn't have to be.
Yeah. And without further ado, I talked about this on Instagram a long time ago. We saved this episode for last because I was so excited about it. My fiance Colin is very into MMA, very into the UFC, and he got me watching the most recent season of The Ultimate Fighter with him. While I was watching that, I saw a one Mr. Cody Gibson sort of telling his adoption story around the dinner table. And I was like, oh my God, he has to come on the podcast. And I DM'd him in the middle of the Ultimate Fighter season, which was so stupid. And he ended up making it to the finals,
Yes.
which is why he didn't answer me. He fought bantamweight. He did such an incredible job. Him and the guy that he fought won fight of the night.
Yes.
And that is like very rare for the card that they were fighting on.
Yeah.
But he is an amazing fighter and had an amazing life story. And we could not wait to bring him on. He ended up, I DM'd him after the season was over. He DM'd me right back and said, oh my gosh, I remember seeing your message. And that reason I didn't answer actually was that it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable to think about digging into my story. And that is the reason that I actually feel like I should do it. And he agreed to come on the pod. And that is who we have on today. Newly contracted
Yes.
UFC fighter, almost champion of the Ultimate Fighter, Cody Gibson. Everyone, please welcome Cody Gibson, the Renegade, to Luke, Who Is Your Father. Cody, how you doing today?
Doing good. I'm where are you guys coming from again?
We're in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's pretty late there for you guys then, huh?
We are burning the midnight oil for you, sir.
Well,
Where
thank
are
you
you
guys for
calling
staying up. I live in California now. So yeah, it's 7:50, but my bedtime's not too far away.
Oh man, well, we hate to be the only thing standing in between you and your bedtime. So we'll try to keep it as short and sweet as we ever do, which I'm telling you right now is not very short, but usually ends up pretty sweet.
No, I'm good. I'm game. I drank some coffee around 4:30, so I'm good.
Good deal.
What part of California are you in?
I live in the Central Coast, so by Cal Poly,
Okay.
San Luis
San Luis
Obispo
Yeah.
area, county. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Very cool. And we would be remiss to not wish you a happy belated birthday.
Yes. Happy belated
thank you.
birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. You look about 26, but I know that's not the case. But we could definitely keep up those airs if you want us to.
You
Yeah,
cut out, but did you say something about how young I look or something?
Yeah, you still caught that. I said you look about 26, so we can definitely keep up that impression if you'd like us to.
Hey, I'm all for it at this point.
Excellent. So just to give the audience a little bit of background, Cody is, it's like when you tell every friend that they're the most beautiful bride you've ever seen.
Right.
But Cody is kind of
It's the most beautiful bride we've ever seen.
kind of the guest we've been most excited to have on this season. Cody, you competed on the most recent season of The Ultimate Fighter and just signed a contract with the UFC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Was on the show, got to the finale and the finals that were held in Boston at the TD Garden at UFC 292. And I lost the fight, but we put on a hell of a fight, so got a contract anyway. Second stint in the UFC, so I've been doing this for a long time.
Congratulations. You guys got fight of the night. That's how good it was.
Yeah, and it's hard to get that on a pay-per-view if you're like on the prelims. Usually like the top of the bill, if the fight ends in like knockout or it's a good fight, they always give it to those guys. So it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was an incredible fight. I really wanted to see you just kick the shit out of Katona. And I know that you guys had all that beef leading up to the fight. So that was really fun to watch. I watched the entire season with my fiance, and then we watched that finale in a bar, and I was sobbing the whole time. And he was like, if you're going to do this, we can't watch these fights in public.
That's hilarious.
But it's easy to get wrapped up in the backstories, which is exactly why we have you on today. Somewhere towards the beginning of the season, during your first main fight of the season, you had sort of alluded to the fact that you had a pretty interesting family story and had actually been adopted. And that's when I messaged you just right in the middle of you competing in the Ultimate Fighter. So I was lucky to kind of get you back on the back end, but that's definitely the vibe of the pod. So that's why we were so excited to have you on. Have you ever spoken about that super publicly before?
I mean, I've always been pretty transparent about it, but I've never like publicly like said like, "Hey, everyone, I'm adopted." You know.
That can be your episode title. Hey, everyone,
I love that.
I'm adopted.
Everyone, I'm adopted. It's perfect.
Okay, so some things to get out of the way before we take it all the way back to you being born in Oklahoma in 1987. First of all, wish your dad a happy retirement. That was very sweet.
Very cute. I want you to know that I made a Twitter account just for you. I mean, I'm sorry, X. Just to read your tweets.
Okay, so your dad just retired. Kudos all around. You just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank
Before
you.
we get started, I did want to call out those jackets that Chandler had made for you guys. They're so sick. I was hoping that you'd be wearing it, but that's okay.
I honestly feel like I'm Tom Cruise from like Top Gun. And so I don't know if I'm cool enough to wear it. Like I would feel like I was an imposter, but it is cool.
It is super cool. I mean, you look pretty cool in the photo of you guys celebrating in Boston with the cigar. I think if you could just walk around like that with the jacket on, you've earned all of the cool points you can.
I know. I should have been wearing that jacket when I took that cigar photo.
You can do it over.
Yes.
So before we get into your childhood, I would love to know, first and foremost, where you got the nickname the Renegade.
Oh, so my junior college mascot was the Renegades. So that's where it originated from. But I was pretty wild in college, like borderline, like I don't know how I made it through it, to be honest.
I can
And
relate.
so me and my best friend at the time, he wrestled with me, and we just started talking about a philosophy to life, and we coined it living like a renegade. And so we had all sorts of different ideas about what that looked like. And so then when I started fighting, I just was like, this kind of sticks. And so it just kind of stayed with me.
I love that. I think it's perfect. You were born in Blackwell, Oklahoma in 1987. And typically it takes us like a while to get to the point where we're actually talking about the familial element of the story. But that puts us pretty much right into the mix. So can you just walk us through being born in Blackwell, Oklahoma, and then being put up for adoption pretty soon after that and what that was all about?
Yeah. Me and my older brother, I have an older brother who's 13 months older than me. Our birth mother was 15 when she had him and 16 when she had me, and had a history of abuse, tough life. And I think we got put in foster care pretty much from the time I was born. Pretty much. I don't know how long she actually had us. I don't think that long. She had my brother more than she had me, because she was just in and out of jail and a drug addict. So we were in foster care for a couple of years, and then not the best experience in foster care. And then we were with a foster parent, an older woman, and she would go to this hearing aid place, and it was like a at-home hearing aid place, like a very small business, like local thing. And so we would sit in the lobby. I'm 2 years old, my brother's 3, or close to that at least. And she found out, the lady who owned the hearing aid business found out that we were up for adoption. This couple from California had been trying to have kids for over a decade and couldn't conceive, and so they were starting to look into adoption. And that lady who owned that hearing aid place was the aunt of my now father, and so she just connected the dots. And back in 1989, adopting was a very different thing than it is today. And I think that the social worker who was in charge of it all came out to California. He flew out. He checked out my parents' house, interviewed them, and then we were here like a few days later. So pretty wild.
That's amazing. It sounds similar to mine and Kendall's sort of adoption. We were adopted in 1991, but it was very much so like right place, right time. Ricky's mom was having her meals cooked by this lady who had a small boutique adoption agency. And when Ricky's mom found out she was pregnant with triplets, it was a pretty immediate, found my parents, bing, bang, boom. We weren't born yet, but same kind of thing. I've been super curious, and we haven't actually gotten to get into it in the season at all, which I wanted to, about the foster care system. So when you said that it was rough that was a rough experience, what was that like?
I mean, I don't really, like, my memory is like not there, so this is all just like what other people have told me,
Yeah.
But from what I've been told, there was abuse and stuff in some of our situations, and I'll just leave it at that because my brother's involved in that too. So, but yeah,
so you guys
apparently it wasn't great.
Yeah. Were you kind of, and to your knowledge, were you bouncing in between homes? You weren't in like a group home. You were being kind of shuttled around from family to family.
I think so. Yeah. And we ended up with an older couple for a long duration of time. So.
Okay.
Were you always together?
Yeah. My brother's been the only thing in my life that I've had since I was born. And he was without me for a year, but that's because I wasn't born yet.
And he fights too, right?
He doesn't fight. He was a wrestler, a college
Wrestler.
wrestler, and he does Brazilian. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now. He just got his black belt actually.
That's amazing. And then I think I saw that your cousin it's like a family. It seems to run in the family a little
affair.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cousin who lives down in Los Angeles area, and but he trained with me for a lot of years, and he's a professional fighter too. He's only had a few pro fights so far, but
Yeah. That's so
he's on his way
interesting.
up.
Do you know why that's a commonality between all of you? Did one kind of turn the other one onto it, or does it actually just run in your blood?
No, I think my dad got my brother into wrestling when he was in the 7th grade, because I think he saw that he needed something to have confidence in. My brother was really shy, introverted, not very outgoing, and he just like not a lot of confidence. And so my dad just kind of pushed him in the direction of trying wrestling. And my brother's smaller, like to this day he's probably like 140 pounds. He's 37. So when we were kids, he was like 100 pounds, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason I think my dad was just like, this guy's not going to play in the NBA. So something like wrestling where they have weight classes, you know, and he could compete. And so he kind of forced him to do it. And I was too busy playing basketball. I thought I was going to be the next big basketball star. And I didn't make my freshman basketball team. And I was like heartbroken. I'd already bought shoes for the season.
Oh,
Like,
no.
Yeah, and so my brother was just like, come out for wrestling, and he convinced me to try it, and then I did, and then I fell in love with it. Stopped playing. Both of us only wrestled year round. Like, we didn't play other sports. We just did it all year, and we just kind of got my family involved. Like, my other brothers wrestled. I had multiple cousins that wrestled as a result of kind of watching us, and so it kind of became a family thing where I have a bunch of cousins that are, you know, younger, like 10 years younger than me, and they all kind of came up watching us wrestle, and so then they all decided to, and that's why a lot of wrestlers turn into fighters, you know. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just for like the duration of the rest of this, when we're referring to dad, and then any cousins, whatever it is, these are all your adoptive family.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
I think that's, yeah.
Oh, no. We're in the same boat. I'm totally in the same boat, just for the listeners.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there will be a lot of times that we depart because of our curiosity, because we can't possibly not be curious about the fighting. And that's not what this is about. But something that I have to know, you just said that your brother's a little bit smaller and he like comes in at 140. And you fight bantamweight, don't you?
I fight at 135, but I weigh 135 pounds for about 15 seconds.
Right. And then what do you walk around in?
I walk around at 165.
Oh my God.
That
that's
is so
fucking
crazy.
It's so crazy. The discipline, my Lord.
Okay. I was very curious about that because I was like, I mean, obviously I know that you don't just live your life at 135, but I had to know what the fluctuation was. So you were adopted at 2. Your brother was adopted at 3. Were you always aware that you were adopted? You had to be, right? Because of you weren't adopted at birth?
Yeah, and my parents just always told us, and that was like a part of our story. And, you know, my parents were amazing with both of us in a lot of ways. And, they were just always very open about the adoption. I mean, I look back on it, it's not something we like talked a ton about, but it was always a part of our story and wasn't like hidden or anything, you know?
Mm-hmm. And were you curious about your birth parents?
I've always been had more curiosity, and my brother's like not interested.
No way.
So yeah, he's not interested at all. And I've always been like the curious one and the one who sought after stuff after, you know, meeting some people or at least online meeting people like a sister and stuff. So yeah, I've always been curious.
Do you have any inkling as to why your brother was not curious at all?
My brother is very like he's the kind of guy who like clocks in and does his job, but puts his head down, and then he clocks out and he's like, "Don't talk to me. I'm off work now." And and like he's just very like black and white, and I just don't think he cares. Like he just
Yeah.
genuinely doesn't seem to care, which is totally fine,
Yeah.
but I'm very different, so.
It kind of like spans the gamut with us. Ricky, much like you, very curious. She always has been that way, but I think that it also has a lot to do with how we grew up. There's me, who's kind of in the middle, who I'm like, oh, just if you find anything, let me know, whatever it is. And then Kendall, our sister, who we get to talk about behind her back today.
Hell yeah.
She is very much so. It sounds like your brother, just like don't care, you don't even need to talk to me about it. Hers has always, I think it's a kind of a mixture of both, of like sincerely she doesn't care, but she's also very, very protective of our parents. So I just didn't know if you would like picked up on that at all from your brother. Like this is my mom, this is my dad. I don't want to hurt their feelings by being curious about this. You know what I mean?
There's always been an element of that, especially once, as the story goes, and we like a sister found us, and like it became more real, and then I went and met them, and it's always been an element of that though. It's like we don't want to hurt our parents' feelings and like act like we're seeking out these relationships with other people, but they've been our parents pretty much our entire lives. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Did they tell you at any point if you want to find your birth parents, we'll help you, or was that something that they kept pretty close to the vest?
No, they said pretty much that exact thing. My mom said that to me, like, if you ever have interest and want to know more, just ask.
They sound so great.
I know. I can't wait to talk more about them.
Yeah.
Your dad's aunt was the one who worked at the hearing aid shop.
Just
The
love
hearing
this.
aid shop.
The hearing aid place.
Did she take a special shining to you and your brother, and that's why she made the connection? Like, did she see a lot of people in and out where she could have made the connection, but picked you two specifically, or do you know why she made that choice?
I think that she talked to my dad from time to time, and my dad spent a lot of his summers in Oklahoma, and so she was aware of their problems and struggles, and probably at some point they must have had a conversation that they were looking into adoption. And then so when we would come every week or 2 weeks or however often our foster parent went to the hearing aid place, then I don't know, I'm assuming that she made that connection and was like, well, maybe this is something,
That's such a stroke of, what is that word that we
Fortune.
use? Yeah, fortune.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So do you, oh shoot, I had a question.
She lost it.
And now I forget what it was. Mhm.
We'll give her 5 seconds.
Yep. La, 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 la. Oh, so your parents, what do you know about, how long had they been married when you guys were adopted? And what do you know about their journey to have kids?
They had been married. They
they
got married. Yeah. They got
Did you say
married when they were
15 and 16?
No. His adoptive parents.
Oh, your adoptive parents. I was like, why are you assuming that that's
That they
before
were married? No.
Okay. Proceed.
They got married when they were 19, and so that would have been. They just had their 50th wedding anniversary, or 50. Or they're not at 50 yet. They're like at 40. They've been married for a while, like over a decade.
Over a decade. Yeah. Like,
No.
well, and they had kids. Okay. Oh my God, sorry.
We're gonna lock it up
Okay.
now. Starting now.
The only what reason I kind of know this is that apparently when I was on the show and was talking about this, I told Chandler or whoever I was talking to that my parents had been trying for 18 years, and then when I got home, my mom was like, "We'd only been trying for 13 years or something like that."
Get it right, Cody. Okay, so they
Yeah.
had been trying for 13 years to have children, so they were probably around like 33,
30, yeah.
about the same age as my parents were. And had they, up to that point, I don't even know what that really looks like in the 80s, 70s, like late 70s almost, to try to have kids. So were they planning on adoption before? How long were they planning to adopt? Do you know, before they adopted you guys?
I don't think for very long. I don't
Damn.
think. I feel like they within the 6 months to a year.
Wow.
It wasn't like it was. It wasn't like they went through some like long process.
Yeah. They just went through a long process of fertility issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. And then did they ever express to you, I feel like it might be, we haven't talked to very many people where they weren't adopted at birth. Did they express that there were any specific struggles in adopting kids that were 2 and 3 versus adopting kids straight from birth?
The only struggle, I mean, it seems comparatively to what I know about adoption today, it seemed like almost like significantly easier. But they did go through. My birth father tried to blackmail them and sent them a letter and said, "I won't get in the way of this whole thing if you send me this check," And they just told like their attorney that was handling the adoption. I was like, "We don't know what to do with this," and the guy, I guess the attorney told him like, "You don't touch that," So
Wow.
that was all I remember. That's what I remember as far as like their struggles with it. But relative to how adoption is today, it definitely seems like a lot easier process back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I was asking was, and that was great, juicy. But I guess what I was asking was, in terms of you guys being 2 and 3, did you express, to your knowledge, any sort of resistance to that because of your experiences prior, or were you really happy to be adopted and settled in quickly?
I think, I don't know, from what they've told me, we didn't struggle. I think there were some things that we struggled with as children from the trauma we probably experienced. But as far as like I've never really asked them about like, was there a transitional period where like we were a little bit on edge, or how long before we felt like you were our parents, and like
Yeah.
we were, I don't know how long that process took, but I don't know, from the home videos it doesn't seem like it was very long.
I wonder if we can get our hands on any of that footage.
A little footage.
It's probably so cute. Okay, so tell us then. So you are adopted, you move out to California, and then just tell us about your childhood. What was it like?
So my parents got pregnant a few months after they adopted us.
Of course they did.
They did.
And so they went through their pregnancy, my mom's pregnancy, and then Josh was born in 6 months instead of 9 months. He was a premature baby.
Holy shit.
And so back then, this was 1990 when he was born. I'm 3 years older than him. Today, because my wife was a NICU nurse for many years, so I know this. But today, like a 6-month pregnancy, like high chance the kid's gonna be just fine. But back then, it was a high chance that he was gonna die. And then he was in an incubator. We had an incubator in our house, and he was pretty much just living in that thing for a long time. And then, but luckily he didn't have any cognitive issues. He has cerebral palsy, but he didn't have any cognitive issues, and that was it. And my parents were told that it was not genetic, and that it was just something that happened, and they didn't have to worry about like if they were to conceive again. And they also probably thought like, well, it took us 14 years, so I mean, and so we just lived our life at that point. And 3 years later, they got pregnant again. And so this second pregnancy, of course, my mom was like trying to make sure like, hey, everything's good, like all that kind of stuff. And the pregnancy itself, all 9 months, went great. Everything was smooth. She did everything she was told to do, and took off from work at the right time, and everything was going smooth. And then Jacob, my youngest brother, during actual birth, was wrapped around the umbilical cord, and so he's severely mentally and physically handicapped.
I did read that both of your younger brothers were special needs, which I cannot imagine the fucking roller coaster. So your parents are in like this low for, well, I won't. They just had trouble for 13 years. Then obviously ecstatic to be able to adopt you two. And then I wonder if there's anything about like having you two around that made her able to conceive. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
so
just
comfortable.
exactly
and
happy, all of
Mhm.
that. So they conceive, and they're over the moon. And then they have, you know what I mean? Just I feel for them, because then they have your brother born 6 months early, and then they conceive again 3 years later. I'm sure they're so excited. And then this happens. It just seems like they have to be so strong, and obviously have been married for between 40 and 50 years. And so bonded. I'm sure their bond is just absolutely insane, because I think that has to go one of two ways, where it can either make or break you. And they have been through a lot.
Yeah, they like my parents both work in nonprofit now, and my mom is a director for a nonprofit that helps with special needs children. But the percentage of like parents of special needs children that get divorced is like ridiculously high.
Yep, I would think so.
Or like the percentage of like parents that become like have problems with substance abuse as a result
Mhm.
of trying to like cope with it. And so yeah, they've done great, all things considered. And it really just there's a lot of positives that came out of it. I know that's weird to say because you're like, this sucks, like that's a shitty story. But like there were a lot of positives that came out of it. And my brothers are who they are, and you know, like we accept them for who they are, and we see value. I see value in my youngest brother, whereas like I could understand like if a casual bystander would be like, "What's his like?" He's just kind of a vegetable, and he doesn't do much. He's now going to be 30 years old this year, and the doctors when he was born, they said he had a 4-year life expectancy, and so. But the thing that kept with him is his emotions. Like, so when he's happy, he lets you know. When he's sad, when he's mad at you, all of that's still there, intact. And so he knows you, and he knows your voice. And there's certain things you can do when you stroke his hair, give him a kiss on the cheek, and like, there's just a relationship there that it's hard to describe to the casual bystander, that doesn't have that connection, but it's definitely there. And yeah, so it just kind of made our family what we became, you know.
Yeah. Was it incredibly challenging for you growing up, or was it totally normal?
I think we had a really loving house, you know, like we didn't ever have a ton of money, and we were rambunctious boys, even with the special needs, it didn't matter. And we were a tight knit family because of our circumstances, because of the way things were. Like even just getting out of the house as a family, like was a challenge, you know. And so like my parents became homebodies, like for sure, you know, like to this day, me and my wife laugh about it. Like they need to get out of the friggin' house. They stay at home too much. But yeah, but I always felt protective, and I had such a good relationship with especially my youngest brother Jacob. We shared a room, we shared a bed up until I moved out. Like he was my dude, you know, and like I just yeah, we just had like a really tight family. I don't know how else to say it.
My heart. I think amazing for all of you, because I think they're, again, if your family, just based off what we know, has shown the capacity to go one way where I think a lot of people could go another way. Or I think a lot of kids, and I mean, Jesus Christ, the Reddit posts about some of the stuff like special needs child in the family. I think a lot of children would struggle with that, because I'm sure a lot of attention has to be given to the youngest child. And I think that it could really go one of two ways. So the fact that you guys were able to kind of rally around, and I think that's what I was going to ask. I'm sure you felt immensely protective over them, which is beautiful, because I think it can go a different way. Your the brother that's the third brother. What is his name? Josh?
Yeah, Joshua.
Okay.
Yeah, Josh.
So we have Josh and Jacob. Does Josh still live with your parents?
Oh no, he's married, has a kid,
Amazing.
he's got his master's degree, he's killing it.
Okay, and does he also fight? Do we remember this?
He doesn't
Or
fight.
wrestle?
He wrestled all
Okay.
4 years of high school.
That is.
He weighed about 70 pounds, and the lightest weight class was 103s.
That's
And
amazing.
so he would just drop to his knees as soon as the match started and wrestle on his knees.
Yeah.
And he did some jujitsu for a while, and he's like he's like an encyclopedia for mixed martial arts. Like, you could be like, hey,
Okay.
what happened at UFC 7 in the co-main event, and you'd be like, oh, that's when this happened. He'd tell you about it. So it's crazy.
That's so cool.
That's incredible.
It
He
really is a
would've-
family affair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's dope. Fighters all throughout. And he
Wrestlers,
would've-
fighters. When we say fight, we mean all of it.
Well, I was making a pleasant metaphor.
Oh, okay.
That they're
Sorry.
all
Rewind.
fighters.
Oh, got it.
But that's awesome. He would have spanked Chandler and McGregor in those ice baths.
I don't think so.
I mean, it sounds like if he has an encyclopedic knowledge, he would have.
Oh, you mean in the trivia questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we got back, I asked him, hey, did you get all the questions right on the trivia thing? He was like, yeah.
Duh.
Obviously.
Obviously. It's offensive that you even have.
I knew it. Okay, so super close knit family. You feel super loved, and also you love them hard. When did you? You said that you were rambunctious boys. So what was your behavior like in elementary and middle school?
Not great. I just was very aggressive, and I loved to fight, and I always had a chip on my shoulder, and I liked to pick fights with the guy who was being an asshole to everybody. And I don't know, I just found myself in positions to get into fights, even if I wasn't angry at the person, but I just enjoyed the process. And so and so it was academically, school's always been relatively easy for me, with the exception of mathematics, but like the English, history, that sort of stuff, like reading, writing, that's my forte. And so school, academically, I always did fine, but socially, I sports kept me kind of going, but I was getting suspended a lot until I found wrestling. And so wrestling is what, like, I just had a reason to give a shit,
Little outlet.
Yeah.
I feel like this could come from one of two places, right? I'm wondering if you've thought that there was any sort of maybe unidentified anger about being adopted or abandoned. A lot of people ask us this. Circumstances that led to adoption. I think that's on one side. Or maybe the experience that you had with your brothers just made you ultra protective of anyone. You know what I mean? Do you resonate with either one of those or both?
Yeah, with both of them, like, I feel like I always felt like I had something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as my brother was concerned, like, when we would go on like vacation, not that, like in the summer or something, we'd go to the beach, and people, especially back then, like when they see someone with special needs that looks and is a wheelchair and everything that it is, and they're not used to that, like, you get a lot of stares and stuff from people. And like, I just remember like lashing out in public at people as a kid to a grown up, like to a grown adult, but like, what are you looking at? Like,
Yeah.
and I just had so I just did feel like in a way that it was kind of us against everybody.
Yeah.
So we alluded to it earlier, but it is a primal wound. Any sort of like separation from the family or anything like that. And
I think specifically separation from your mother.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have wondered aloud if you being on the pod might open the door for other people in a similar interest or occupation to be on the pod. Do you think, or have you seen, and we'll talk about it way more later.
Good question.
But
I know. See, I already know what she's going to say. It's a good one.
Do you think that a lot of people in the UFC or who like to fight share the same chip on their shoulder or the same primal wound? Like, do you think that's what brings them there ultimately?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of fighters who have a lot of trauma in their lives and are pretty crazy. Like, there are several guys who are like, oh my God, dude, this guy. But yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, there's a ton of examples of guys who were literally like knocking on death's door as drug addicts. And now they've become like heavy advocates for like substance abuse awareness and like all this stuff. And like, there's a few guys that come to mind, Court McGee, Matt Brown. I mean, there's several to be honest with you, but, and then there's still like domestic violence that happens in our sport, probably at a higher rate than a lot of sports. I mean, I know like NFL is not good either, but I think, yeah, there's a lot of people who find fighting as an outlet to let out their aggression. And so whether or not they become like good at it, and I mean, that does take a level of discipline and sacrifice that probably a lot of just guys who find a gym, and I don't know, it's almost like you become obsessed with it. So
Yeah.
Yeah. My fiance was a wrestler,
nice.
which is why I've gotten myself into watching The Ultimate Fighter in UFC, but definitely shares that chip on his shoulder, which is why. I mean, I ask because you were not the only person in The Ultimate Fighter who was adopted. After I
Yeah.
pointed you out, I was like, hold on, it's like all of them. So that seemed to give some credence to that they might all share that primal wound, and that's why they're there.
It's definitely possible. I don't know why I always wanted to be a fighter or always thought it was fun to get in fights, but it's just always been there. It is a lot of fun, by the way, to get in fights.
You start wrestling in high school at the behest of your brother. How did that go?
Not good at first. I lost my first 27 matches as a freshman. And I'm not talking, I wasn't wrestling like the top dogs. I was like at the junior varsity, like bottom of the barrel tournaments, and was still losing. But I was having a lot of fun, and I really liked it. I just didn't know what I was doing. And
That's such a fucking. I don't think I would do that. I think if I love
would
this
not.
trait about you. I don't think I would. I think if I lost like 5, I'd be like, peace out. I'm done with this. I'm just sick of it. Sick of this. So I think that's such a cool. Just shows obviously what you need to be
My
doing
mom-
what you're doing.
my mom tells me a funny story about after one of these tournaments on this epic 27 loss streak. I was leaving the tournament. I had black eyes, like 2 black eyes, and my mom was like, "Well, maybe we could try a different sport." And I like looked up at her and I was like, "What? Why? Like I love this, like." So yeah, I was
She was
hooked.
being like a mama bear.
Yeah.
That's so
She
sweet.
didn't want to see you lose anymore. So what turned it around?
I just fell in love with the sport, and a lot of the guys, we didn't have like a stellar team, like a history of like a great wrestling team or anything, but we had a big team, and most of those guys played multiple sports, and so they would leave the mats in February, March, and they would come back in October, and that whole time in between then, I was on a mat, so it wasn't some freak genetic gift I had. It was just never leaving the wrestling mat. So
That's
Just hard work.
Amazing.
And I know I took a screenshot of it when I saw it, and I don't want to be rude by looking for it, but it's a great tweet and a testament to what you're talking about. Basically, people were talking on Twitter about the fight. And then someone said that they pretty much had no doubt that it was due to the knee injury and that you deserve to be there. You were the hardest worker there. And someone commented and said that they wrestled with you in high school or watched you, and they were like, I've never seen someone go from, I feel like there's a term like goose or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
like really bad at it.
Yeah. Is there a bird associated with that?
Is there like a term for someone who's really bad at it?
Not a goose, that's for sure. Maybe like a fish.
A fish.
Same.
Potato. They were like, I am talking like from a fish to a championship wrestler, and I've never seen anything like it. And I thought that was very cool that someone was there really coming to bat for you in terms of your work ethic.
That is cool. I was really bad.
Okay, so you are at you're in the ring every day. In the ring?
Nope, on the mat.
On the mat. You're on the mat every day and you start to get better. I'm so curious as to whether this then tempered your aggression off of the mat.
Yeah, I didn't. I got suspended my freshman year, the very beginning of the year, for a fight, and then a few months later is when I started wrestling, and then I never got suspended again. Not that I didn't ever get in a fight again, but I was smarter about it, and
Yep. More strategic.
and I'd gotten a lot less because I had a reason not to, you know.
Oh yeah, because you don't want to fuck up your spot on the wrestling team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did your parents notice a difference? Like, were you, because you were in such a loving home, did they view you as a problem child ever or no?
No, I don't feel like they did. I think that I was the one with the highest expectations. Well, I know I was the one with the highest expectations, as far as school and what I can. My mom has always been great about like just telling me like that anything I could do anything, and you know she's like my biggest cheerleader. So sometimes I'm like, Mom, thank you, I appreciate it. I love you too.
I love you
But
too.
she's always there to make me feel like $1 million for sure.
I wanted to ask a question, and I have two separate questions. So all throughout, when obviously your parents have gone through all this and now you're in high school, how was their marriage going through everything that they went through? What did you kind of observe from that?
I think that they definitely had trials and tribulations and depressions and their own like coping with the fact that they were going to have a child forever, and that it was going to be a very different life than maybe they had thought it was going to be. And so they definitely, but I think the fact that they both then got into nonprofit work that specifically deals with special needs, like they do a lot of public speaking now, and they'll go and tell their story at various events, and I think that helped them heal over the years. And but I mean, I didn't really notice it as a kid as much as I probably, like to me, like my wife always talks about it. Like my family is just like there's so much love, like, and like that, like, and so as a kid, like I just felt very loved, and yeah, I didn't notice it. In retrospect, I'm sure there was a lot, but
They might
my
have
parents, and my parents never drank or anything, so there was never like that added element, or like any substance. But they were Christians and very like religious, and we ended up we stopped going to church because of some bad experiences with the fact that our family dynamic was what it was, and but they were always very religious to some extent. My dad, but my mom for sure, and so yeah, a lot of those elements, like I didn't have to experience like alcohol and stuff, which I think was good for me.
Yeah. Which is amazing. And I think, again, just a testament to the people that they are. We have heard through our interviews with people and then just out in, out there that when a family adopts children first and then has biological children of their own, there are instances where the adopted children then get treated as less because the parents now have biological children of their own, which I think obviously I already know your answer to this, but was there any difference in the way that your parents treated you and your older brother versus their own biological children?
There wasn't any difference as far as like we were treated the same. We were all one family with 4 brothers, and they did one thing my parents did that I really liked when I think back to it is like they had expectations for each of us, and we knew what those expectations were, but the expectations were individualized, and like my brother struggled with academics. But he was really good at working with his hands, and he was really good at art. So the expectation for him, well, like I had to keep a 3.0 or 3.5, like that was the expectation. Whereas with him, it was keep a 2.0 so you can wrestle and keep pursuing these other passions, like whether it be art or mechanics or whatever.
That makes me want to cry.
That's so
I
incredible.
know, that makes me want to cry. I don't know if I've ever heard of that, even just with like regular whatever. Because I grew up with my sister Kendall, and we are very different. We excel in different things, and I guess I haven't really thought about it. Maybe they did have separate expectations for us, but I feel like they did not. I feel like it was just these are the expectations we have for our children. So I that is so cool that they were aware enough to realize, okay, each has their strength, each has their area of opportunity, and we're not going to hold any child up to some unrealistic expectation just because that's what it should be. That's so cool. I love that. Amazing.
That's I've kind of just thought about that and reflected on it. Like that's how I want to be. So I'm
Yeah.
trying.
I'm sure you're doing a great job. Can't wait to talk about that as
Yes.
well. So you ended up excelling in wrestling in high school eventually. At that time, was your curiosity about your adoptive parents or your birth parents ramping up, or when did that happen?
Yeah, I would say somewhere in my adolescence, like 13, 14, 15, I started thinking more about that and wondering, having more questions. But I wasn't I didn't talk to my parents about it. And, but I knew it was something I was going to do. Like I was going to seek them out someday. I knew that I would do that someday. So yeah, I definitely think that the curiosity of it all definitely spiked during that kind of adolescent time.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that you always knew that you were adopted, but did you always know the circumstances that you came from?
Just the general story, that, she had problems with drugs and was very young, and me and my brother had different fathers, but that my birth father was in prison, and, but it was pretty like skimpy story,
Mhm.
and like I just didn't feel comfortable asking a lot of questions,
Yeah.
even though my mom was very like, if you ever want to know stuff, let me know. But I just never felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make any assumptions because the answer could very well be no, but we have interviewed people where as their curiosity about their birth parents ramped up, that's when like their substance abuse issues started. Would you correlate those two things at all?
I mean, yeah, that's when I started finding that stuff. But I would say in high school I was not too different than most others. Like, yeah, you experiment with like, oh, I'm smoking a joint or I'm drinking a Mike's Hard Lemonade or something. Like back then, like but I don't think I was like excessively like drinking alcohol. I mean, probably more than most, but not as much as like by the time I was in my 20s.
I have a so similar. Did knowing that your birth parents have these struggles and have these issues, did that factor into your behavior at all? Did it make you like wary of doing too much of that because you knew that addiction ran in your family, or that you had incarceration in your family, or did it kind of make you lean even further into that?
I think if anything, it probably had me lean further into that.
Yeah.
And there's always that question of like nature versus nurture, and like how much of this is like genetic. I know I have like an addictive personality, because whatever I'm doing is like, that's all I think about, and I'm addicted to it. And luckily, had the right people in my life and been able to pull myself out of a hole enough times to figure out that I need to be addicted to some positive things. But I could definitely see like I feel it. Like I feel like in a different circumstance, like I could have gone down a very different path, and I could have got addicted to some things that wouldn't have led me in a good direction. So
Yeah.
I feel like people forget that you can be addicted to good things.
Mm-hmm.
But I would, there's no fucking way that those people running out on the street aren't running from something else. You know what I mean? There's no way they're not fighting off some other form of addiction because those people are crazy.
Like actual runners.
yes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, they're addicted to the runner's high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're
Have
probably
you-
addicted to other things.
Yeah, exactly.
have you guys ever met a CrossFitter?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
unfortunately.
They get addicted, they find community, and it's for dealing with a lot of things, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just kidding about unfortunately, sort of.
We'll see. So you did you get a scholarship for wrestling? To go to
Yeah, so
college?
I started in junior college because even though I had pretty good grades, I hadn't taken the right courses, and so I wasn't on a pathway to a 4 year, and so I had to start at junior college, and did that for 2 years. Wrestled. That's where I met my wife. She played college basketball, so we were in the athletic trainer room together and icing our injuries, and that we were 19, and so and then I transferred to
So you were
Menlo
the same
College.
same age as your parents when they got married, when you met your wife.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
If you can't do it, marry someone who can.
the basketball.
That's really amazing. So
She doesn't like to play one-on-one with me because I just butt scooter the whole time, and I'm like a solid 5 or 6 inches taller. But if we play like horse or like or anything that involves
Smoke your
actual
ass.
skill, she smashes me every time.
Amazing.
I mean, yeah, playing basketball as a woman in college is no joke. So
No.
I'm sure of it. Okay, so then you're wrestling in junior college, and then you started fighting during college as well. So how did those? Can you do both at the same time? How does that work?
I don't think so. I just did. um, I'm pretty I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do that. I've never met anyone or too many people who did that, but I would just do it in the summertime. Like I would come home and crash my brother's couch because I was living in the Bay Area. When I transferred from Bakersfield Junior College to Menlo College, it's up in the Bay Area. And so I was living in the Bay Area, going to school wrestling, and then I would come back to the Central Valley where I grew up in the summer and crash on his couch. And then I just started. One of my buddies was going to a gym, and so I went there for like a week, and then like a week later, I had my first pro fight. So
Yeah, I read that. That's so brave.
Is
I
that
just
recommended?
it's not a typical path. Usually, you train for probably nowadays a few years before you have even an amateur fight.
Okay, Cody.
But this was a different day and age, and the sport was in the infancy, still in Wild West times, and I was fighting in casinos and Native American resorts, and sometimes there would be guys on the card with like smoking a ciggy with like jorts on, and they're about to go in, you know, and they're like, so yeah, there's a lot of interesting stories with fighting.
I'm sure. And then what became of your wrestling career in college? I know that you have said that you have a lot of regrets about not meeting your potential as a college wrestler. So what happened there?
Yeah, it was the years I was sober. I was really successful, and then I would have times where I would always somewhat dial myself in for wrestling season, but not during off season. And then I ended up having to redshirt my junior year when I moved to the Bay Area, and so that means that I'm on the team and I'm practicing, but I'm not competing. And that was the worst thing that could have happened to me because without the competition, like I just became a degenerate at that point, and I almost got kicked out of school. Had to see the school psychiatrist weekly for the remainder of my time there. Actually had what do they call the guy at the college who's like the top guy? Provost, what's it called?
The dean or the provost?
Is provost a word? Does that make
Provost
sense?
is a word.
And I think it's a place in Utah too.
That's provo. Provost, you definitely go to the provost's office. Let's see.
She's Googling.
Provost is a senior administrative officer in
there you
certain
go.
colleges and universities, or the head of a chapter in a cathedral. So
Probably
yes,
the first one, yeah.
yeah.
So the provost came to my hearing and vouched for me and actually got me to stay in the school. So that was cool.
What did you do?
Not good things.
Okay, that's all
Okay.
right. Were you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just I was like blackout drunk, and my wrestling coach during my redshirt year, I was living off campus because I couldn't afford to live on campus. Like it didn't work with my financial like package or whatever. So I had to like I was living in East Palo Alto, which is like the ghetto. And anyway, when I was off campus, the school didn't know about me. Like they didn't know I was like wild and crazy and partying my ass off. Like I'd still go to class, like, and then I would just leave campus and do all of that. And so anyway, my wrestling coach was like, "Hey, if you apply to be an RA at the
Oh
school,
my God.
if,
Oh,
if,
oh
if
no.
you if you get the job, then you get free room and board, And so I was like, "All right, what's an RA?" And then I got the job, and then because I was actually like, I could put myself together and go to an interview, and like sound like halfway, like I know what I'm talking about. So they ended up giving it to me, and that was a mistake. And I just I actually did a good job at that job when it came to like planning events and stuff. But when it came to like monitoring alcohol, I was everyone's favorite RA. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that much.
A recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
while you're,
Wait, hold on. Why did the provost come and vouch for you?
oh yeah, good question.
Oh yeah, so I had gotten like blackout drunk and threatened. So when they fired me from being an RA, finally, they I was like blackout drunk, and he was like the guy had graduated from the college like 2 years prior, and was working as like I guess as like a director of the RAs or something. And so anyway, he wasn't much older than me, but I'd like threatened him to some extent, like. And then I woke up in like a drunken stupor like the next morning, and I had like 30 missed calls from my coach. I was like, "Oh shit, what did I say? What did I do?" And apparently, like the
The
police
worst
were looking.
feeling.
The police were looking for me to have a conversation, and yeah, I got. So pretty much my senior year, I had to live off campus. I couldn't participate in any of the activities on campus. I could go to wrestling practice and I can go to class, and I had to leave after that. Was pretty much the arrangement that was made, so that
You're a threat to society.
they had a restraining order against me. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. I don't even remember it, but
But I bet what do you think it was about your character that made the provost comfortable or compelled to vouch for you?
I mean, I think I was
Put
so
their
close to
ass on the line. Yeah.
I think I was so well. So the thing we went to court for was the restraining order, and the problem was my question was, if this dude has a restraining order against me and he works at the school, how am I supposed to go to school? And so he came to essentially say, with these limitations, we feel comfortable allowing
Right.
him to finish his senior year or do his senior year and not kick him out of the school. And so I always and he paid for my parking. I'll never forget that because I didn't have any money. So
That's
I'll never
nice.
forget that.
So
Yeah.
sweet. I think he just thought Cody was a very promising individual.
Yes, promising young man.
With a good heart.
Probably not.
This whole time that you are kind of going through this phase, we will call it, were you with you were dating your wife?
Yeah, I don't know how she
She's
stuck
a
with me.
champion.
And we were
Well, I
doing
think
long distance.
that might have helped your case.
She was down in Monterey at Cal State Monterey Bay, and I was up in the Bay Area. So we had like a 2.5 hour drive, and we saw each other a lot on the weekends and stuff. But yeah, I don't know how she stuck with me through my worst times. So
Well, I think that's kind of what Ricky was getting at with asking about the provost is there's obviously, and I hope I can say the same for myself because I have been through sort of the same things at times, but I think when you have people that are not willing to give up on you, it's because it's something about you that they see
Or
kind of a light at the end of the tunnel.
maybe she said something to that extent. Like, I always felt like you were gonna turn it around.
It's really amazing that you did. There are a lot of women in horrible fucking positions because they stuck with someone who they were really sure was going to turn it around and then
Never
they
did.
never did.
I think she would have left me if I didn't. So
Um, what was what were your conversations with her like surrounding your situation, your adoption, family situation, stuff like that?
she's always been pretty supportive about it, but I think she's very close with my family now too. Like she's been we were the first married, and she's been a part of my family. And then she came from a family that didn't have a lot of love, and like they had love in the home, but the way they expressed it was very different. And her mom
Mhm.
died when she was 12, and of breast cancer, and so she had to essentially this broken dad trying to raise 4 kids or 3 kids. I'm sorry. So she had her own interesting story, and so when she saw like how much love was in my household, and she never had something like that, like in the same way, she's always been very a part of my family, and but I think she has a little bit of that same like doesn't want to hurt my parents' feelings kind of approach
Yeah.
sometimes, but she's always been supportive. I think when I eventually went to Oklahoma and met my parents, there was some apprehension on her end, but that was understanding.
I wonder if we could maybe do our first ever two sides of the same coin interviews.
Maybe. Do you think that that was a big component of what drew you and your wife to each other was that you shared interesting stories?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, she definitely had her own trauma in different ways and was still trying to deal with all of that. And yeah, it's been a ride, for both of us. So I think that probably did like two wounded animals or something. I don't know, but yeah, to some extent.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. So you didn't live up to your wrestling potential in college. What did it look like to come out of college and then talk us through kind of your trajectory from there?
Yeah, so I had started to fight just in the summertime, and then my senior year, they offered me a fight in the middle of wrestling season, and it was against like a jiu-jitsu guy, and I was told my coach, like, Coach, if I go take this fight real quick, I'll make like
Hey,
two
Dennis
thousand.
Rodman.
I was like, I'll make $2,000, and I could just live off that second semester and like not have to work because I was working and going to school and training for wrestling, and there's a lot, And I was like, I'll be able to just focus on wrestling the second semester. So he let me do it, and I went and fought, and then I came back and finished out my senior year, and I had gone up a weight class because I was like, I'm not cutting any weight my senior year. I'm just not gonna do it. So like I was competing at the high level with like the good guys, but I was just undersized, and I ended up being a match away from being an All-American in college, and so um, it was just like. But I also knew I didn't deserve it, Like I hadn't really put in the amount of work that needed to be put in, and so when I graduated, I was very like disappointed in myself and um, just disappointed in the fact that I had allowed the things I thought were important at the time, like socializing and partying, and that's just how I was dealing with things, and I was just disappointed. And so mixed martial arts became like my redemption.
I just it's so your self-awareness is definitely inspiring.
Thank you for bringing that up. That is what I wanted to ask. How did you feel about seeing the psychiatrist in college?
She was just, I don't know. I just felt like a goofball. Like, I gotta sit out. We would sit on a bench, like an outside bench of the just in the middle of the college, and we would just like have an hour-long session once a week. And it was never anything like I was doing pretty good my senior year. Like I wasn't drinking too much, or like was kind of getting my head together a little bit, and so I just felt it was unnecessary. But yeah, I did what I had to do, to check that box.
So they were pretty basic conversations. It wasn't like breakthroughs in terms of childhood trauma or anything like that.
I think it was, is he
Check a
safe,
box.
safe to be on campus?
I think that's what it was. Like she really was just checking on how I was doing,
Yeah.
how school was going, and like as long as I was showing signs that things were heading in the right direction,
Yeah.
then that was, I think, she was like a watchdog, I think, more than anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, a keeper.
My last kind of question about all of this is because, again, it's something that I still don't know if I've really come to terms with myself, but when you're talking about these kind of, and it was hard for me to even call it this for a long time, substance abuse issues in college, what do you think that was about? Was that just about like partying, socializing, like you said, having a good time, or was there something else behind that?
No, it was definitely more than that. Like, I don't know. I just, I had to be the guy that did the most. I had to drink the most. I had to smoke the most. Some phases of cocaine where it was like, whoa, shit, I'm glad I don't have the money for this stuff because this is gonna be bad.
Yep. That's
So, I mean,
so you're
A competitor.
yeah, that's literally what it is. It sounds like it was rooted very deeply in like a competitive spirit, and just you want to be the best at these. You want to be the guy.
yeah, and I think too. I don't know. I was probably just trying to. I was going through. I'll look back at pictures and I'm like, dude, what you look like shit. Like I had like dyed my hair black, and I wasn't like goth or anything. I don't know why I did this, but yeah, and I went through like a skinny jean phase.
Do you have these pictures? Can we have them?
No, I burned them all. This was before it was social media, so the evidence is long gone.
Lucky duck.
Okay.
Okay.
So just trying to find yourself and also be the guy.
Yeah, it was bad, and I don't know. It took me a long time, even after college. It took me a long time to
Same.
deal with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Same.
So we're kind of obviously the only thing standing in between you and your bedtime. So we're gonna probably pick it up. But so to talk about your fighting career, I think a thing that encapsulates why we're here and then your fighting career as well is you tweeted, you're very open and we love your Twitter or your X profile or whatever we're calling it now. But you said, there was a time in my career when a loss crippled me, months of depression, and I often found comfort in the bottle. Victory meant people showed me love. Defeat didn't just bruise my bones, it bruised my sense of self-worth. Happy to say I'm beyond that now. My journey is mine. So could you give us the background there of what you were going through and exactly what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think part of this fighting game is weird is that you get a lot of attention. You're not on a team sport, and it's all you. You're naked in there essentially. I mean, you're literally in some little shorts, and that's all you got. So, it's a very like you're putting yourself out there, and I do think that I'm still like trying to learn about like why, like you do get a lot of like. I think that wrestling originally was the thing that like gave me confidence, gave me like this is my sense of identity. I'm good at this, so I'm this guy. This is what I am, and I think fighting in a lot of ways defines me as much as anything else. You always say there's more to you than that, but it's definitely a big part of who I am, and so like taking losses has always been challenging, and I will go down rabbit holes sometimes. I have, and so after that was my I lost a fight against Ray Borg, the crazy fight, really good fight. But that's when I wrote that, and it was just to say that like I'm I'm okay. Like I'm okay with, like, I'm not gonna go down the same rabbit hole I've gone down before and kind of get into this depression and substance abuse and all this cycle I've been in, and um, I'm gonna be okay. And so that's why I wrote that.
It seems like almost a return to your fish days. You know what I mean? Like because you obviously didn't have when you first started wrestling and you suffered these 27 losses. I think you had never won, so it was harder to go down any kind of rabbit hole. Also, you were like in high school, so but it seems like almost a return to that kind of mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just I think too, I've been doing this for 15 years now, and so you get to a point where you're like, no matter obviously you want to do well and you want to win and you want to leave whatever legacy you're going to leave in the sport, to be a good one. But if everything goes to shit and like I'm too old now to do it, and the next 3 fights I look slow and I lose, like I'm gonna be okay. Like
Yeah.
I still got my wife, I still got my 2 great kids, and like it's pretty solid life. So I don't know. I guess I just took that burden off my shoulders. So it's been the last couple of years have been a lot of growth in that department. So
That's incredible. I'm wondering if they go hand in hand with, so you found out through social media that you had a sister and you met your biological parents for the first time in 2018. Tell us this string of events.
yeah, I had a sister who had known about me and my brother her whole life, and we had never known about her. Um,
Thing.
and she and my parents had told my birth mom when they adopted me and my brother that if she ever had another child and couldn't, and needed someone to take that child, to call them. Um, and that never happened. And Cindy, she grew up part time with our birth mother. I think it was off and on throughout her whole life. And she still has a relationship with her to this day. But yeah, she knew about us her whole life, and then she found us on Facebook, and started kind of shooting messages back and forth, and it just kind of grew from there. And in 2018, I decided to make the trip out to Oklahoma and meet her. And actually, that's wrong. She came to California first, with her boyfriend at the time, and they stayed with us for like a week. And I don't think we had kids yet, so it was just like kind of took them around. I think we took them to the beach or whatever, and it was definitely awkward.
The delivery is so too good.
It's
Too
excellent. So wait,
And-
before you get into that, take us back to those first messages. How did she get your attention?
I'm trying to remember back. I remember she reached out. She kind of told us the story about how she had known about us her whole life, and I just remember like slowly starting to have a relationship with her. Um,
Were you
but
excited?
I think I was, yeah. I think I was blown away at the thought of it, and I was definitely guarded for sure too, though, and like not 100% sure about things, but I was excited, and when they came out and I met her, and it was awkward, but it was also cool, and the you know they came out again, um, probably in 2017. Yeah, it was the year before I went out, and she had gotten married. She has 3 children, and they're great kids, and um, so they all came out and stayed out here, and we had a really good time with them when they were out here with my kids and her kids, and it was good. And so then in 2018, I said, I'm going to make the trip out there, stay with you guys for like a week. And while I'm doing that, I might as well meet my, my birth mother and my birth father, who were both uh, around. They weren't like in her city, but they were within driving distance, so Oklahoma City. So,
Were you nervous about that?
oh yeah, I was just like, I had started talking to my birth mother, who I still feel like my biggest feeling toward her is like just sadness, like not anger or anything like that at all. Like I'm happy that it worked out for me the way it did. But like, she just had such a fucked up life, and like so much shitty stuff has happened to her that you're just like, I just feel bad for her, and like she's still struggling financially with drugs. And really, that whole area of Oklahoma got hit hard by the opioid epidemic, with like all the doctors pushing that stuff on those people.
Yeah.
It was pretty eye-opening to go to my sister's city, this little tiny Waurika, California, or sorry, Waurika, Oklahoma, and like the whole town was like on method. What's that stuff called? Methadone.
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 Mm-hmm.
Like everybody was on that, and it was like, whoa, this is weird,
That is, it's
Yeah, those they were fucking criminals. Did you? I know you like to read and write, and we obviously know your vocation, which we'll get into.
Yes.
We'll end on because it's so cute. But did you read Demon Copperhead?
I did not.
I recommend it. And it's basically about it's a fictionalized story about David Copperfield, the Shakespeare story, but it's about the opioid epidemic and how it started in Lee County, Virginia, and how
Okay.
they targeted it because it was a mining town and everyone had injuries, and the whole town basically wiped out in a couple years.
it's so crazy.
So yeah, that's bizarre.
I just watched Painkiller
Yeah.
on Netflix with me and my wife. Watched that series, and that was just like, and I know some of it was fictitious or whatever, but if that's half true, it's just wild.
I think a lot of it's true. If you watch that, Ricky and I have seen, I didn't know that this happened, like, because they did Candy, and then Candy was like one thing on HBO and then one thing on Hulu. And I was like, what the fuck? This is the same exact story. How are they allowed to do this? But they did Dope Sick before they did Painkiller. And I think that does that actually follows the mining town narrative. And I think it does an even better job showing exactly what you're talking about, how they decimate a
Whole
it
population.
gives my
Yeah.
it gives me goosebumps. I had a question about your sister. Did your sister grow up with any other siblings?
No, I don't believe so.
God. Oh, my heart. Because Ricky grew up alone. She grew up as an only child. And so she had this just yearning to meet my sister and me and my sister for her whole life. And it just breaks the fact that she went, how old was she when you guys finally met each other, or when she reached out?
She was probably like 22, 23.
22, and had been through, I'm sure, a tumultuous life, and had obviously been thinking about you and your brother the whole entire time. And it just makes my heart hurt for her. And I'm so happy that you guys were able to find each other. But that was an aside.
It's a good aside. So tell us about meeting your mom and your biological mother and father for the first time.
Yeah, so I went with my sister, and we met my biological mom in Oklahoma City. We just met her at a restaurant, and we just spent an afternoon with her essentially, and just got to know each other a little bit, and she's still struggling, and not everything's great in her life, and like I said, I just kind of have, my biggest feeling is just sadness, and like I feel bad for you, and I have a relationship with her, but I keep it at a safe distance. It's like I'll message with you, she's sent some stuff to me before for the kids and stuff like that, but she'll go 6 months where I don't hear from her, and then all of a sudden she'll pop back up, and sometimes she sends me messages that I can't understand a goddamn thing she's saying because she's like on something. And then other times she's totally cognizant and like actually has like good grammar and everything. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, you're pretty smart. Like you're pretty like put together in this. This is like a better, I don't know. And then other times you're just like, oh.
Yeah. Was she happy to meet you?
Oh yeah. And she's pushed for more of a relationship, but she's been relatively good about giving me my space, and it is what it is. I haven't heard from her in a few months, but like I said, I'll hear from her when I hear from her, and the relationship is what it is.
Has your older brother been involved in any of this?
He met my sister when she came to visit both times. The first time, and then the second time, because I moved from where my whole family lives. I moved to the coast, so I'm about 2.5 hours from them now. And so when the second time my sister came, she came to my house because we talk, and she doesn't really talk to my brother very often or ever anymore. Um, they have talked though, and I mean, there's a picture of us. I remember we all went to the beach, and it was fine, but he's just never been that interested. So
Yeah.
And what about meeting your biological father?
yeah, so then like a few days after that, I met up with my biological father in Oklahoma City at a restaurant, and him and his wife. And we ended up going to like walking. His wife was going to be late, and so we walked to it's not a Bass Pro Shop, but it's like the other one, like
Cabela's.
yeah, like a Cabela's or something. Like there was one like down the street, and so we just went in there and like walked around and looked at stuff and shot the shit, and then we had lunch together, and yeah, I mean, I personally do have like he's doing much better, as far as like he's sober. He was in prison for many years, and he's an electrician in Oklahoma City. His wife actually owned a furniture store, and she seemed super cool and nice, and like seemed like an awesome lady. And I actually communicated with her more than him over the last couple of years. And then she committed suicide like about 6 weeks ago.
Oh my
So
God.
it was just weird because I guess she had been gambling a lot of their money and was in like a bit of a addicted gambler, and had like gone through a bunch of their money. And according to him, just the guilt of that, she just ended her life. And so when he told me that like 6 weeks ago, I just didn't know what to say. Like
Yeah.
I don't have the relationship with you where I'm gonna be like, I'm here for you. Like I just didn't know
Yeah.
how to respond. It was tough, and I still like have talked to him a couple times just through messages. But yeah, I just feel bad for him. But so far he seems to be. He didn't turn back to anything. So
That's what I
That's
was going to
incredible.
ask if you were worried about that.
yeah,
So I mean, it's very clear, just the way you talk about it, that okay. I think we have both experienced meeting our biological father for the first time. I've experienced meeting my birth mom for the first time. And there's obviously a lot of anticipation building up to that moment. And then once it's come and gone, it has felt a little bit anticlimactic for us. How did you feel overall? What was the overarching feeling after you had met your biological sister, biological father, and biological mother?
I feel the same. I feel like my biological mother sent me this giant package of like letters that she's written me over the last 30 something years, and I opened it and looked at it for about 3 minutes, and it still haven't touched it. And I don't know, which is weird because I've always had like a curiosity about like where I came from and like wanting to know these things. And then like I don't know what's stopping me from like actually diving into it and asking questions and trying to get to the root of it and looking at her version of my childhood as opposed to my adopted parents, and like trying to make sense of how I got here and where I come from. And I just kind of feel like I've stopped, and I
Mhm.
just can't seem to get over, or I just don't know if I don't want to anymore. I just haven't haven't started to like dive into it. I don't know.
I think it's hard to come to terms with the fact that something that you've been curious about for so long, you could just genuinely not be interested in anymore. And that's like a lot of documentation to go through. We met our biological father, and I thought that would really make me feel some type of way or more whole or tell me something about myself. And what we both turned back to was we just came away more certain than ever that we knew what we needed to know about ourselves and who our parents were. And they were the people that raised us. And you might just be disinterested, and that's
Yeah.
okay too.
That's what I was going to ask is coming off of those meetings and those interactions, what was then your feeling towards the family that raised you?
I mean, it was for me just going over there and doing it was kind of like treading on water in a way. Like I just didn't want to upset my parents. I don't want, so I tried to just be reassuring to them, like, hey, I'm not trying to like replace you guys with these people or anything. I just feel like this is something I need to do, and to be honest, like the relationships, the little relationships I have with my biological parents at this point seems more like an obligation than it does like something I necessarily want to do. But you know, it. So yeah, I don't know.
I think it just affirmed for us that our family is our family, and was almost more of like a anchor in that than it was
A pull towards something else.
a pull towards something else. It was just like, oh no, my mom is my mom, my dad was my dad, my sisters are, you know what I mean? Instead of, I think it more solidified that feeling than made us opened a hole, or
It was
felt
not
like-
a can of worms situation.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So now,
I don't know if he said anything. I think he was frozen for a second.
oh, were you frozen?
No, I just had a thought about like even my relationship with my sister and like trying to foster that, and I'm not very good at it. And we have busy lives, we both do, and she's got her son into wrestling now, and so he's like, I'm like his idol, like,
Oh.
and so I need to, and that's where I feel like I need to do a better job, trying to foster that relationship and be an uncle to those kids, because we're not going to see each other all the time, obviously, but it's still hard for me to even do that, but it's something I definitely want to do.
Yeah.
We would encourage
Yeah.
that piece. I think we found that for people that have been separated from their family, they obviously huge curiosity about their parents, but the bond with their siblings has been a bigger deal, or a bigger influence. So I think if you want to, we would definitely encourage building that sibling bond.
But I do think there's something to be said. You care about the kids because you care about kids. You have them and you teach them. But we have a half sister that we found.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. We have a half sister that we found a couple years ago. And I think there's something to be said. You have an established life. You have your own family. You have your own shit to do. When we found each other, we friended each other on Instagram. We said hello. There was no
I forgot about that.
should we meet up? Do you want to have a phone call? It was very much just, I'm aware of your existence. You're aware of my existence. I'm happy to follow along from an unobligatory distance. You know what I mean? So I think that that's pretty common as well.
Obviously super important to me.
So you went on to have 2 daughters, and you're a history and economics teacher. How did that happen?
I'm so obsessed with this. Before you said anything, my father passed away when I was 17, and he was he was an economics major and a total history buff. So it makes me smile from ear to ear.
Oh man, I probably would have liked your dad.
Yeah, most people did.
Yeah, so I started teaching in 2010. No, I'm way off. 2014, something like that.
Was
Like
it right
9
when
years.
you got your first contract with the UFC? That was in 2014, right?
Yeah. No, so I fought. All I did for like most of the time I was in the UFC, the last time, was substitute teach, because it actually was a great job for what I was doing, and like
Oh yeah.
if I needed to ramp up work because I didn't have a fight lined up, I could, and if I needed to scale down on it, I could, and there's no like repercussions. So that was great. But I started coaching, and started giving back and teaching kids how to wrestle, and became the head coach of my alma mater high school for a few years, and then coached all over, and now I'm still coaching, and yeah, I just what was the question again? I'm totally lost now.
I just said, I asked how you came to be a history and economics teacher. So
Oh.
you more or less answered it.
I love history. I don't not even I'm not like if your dad was like a history buff, I wouldn't consider myself a history buff in the sense that I'm not like fascinated with like history facts. I like political science. I like social science. I like why do we structure why do we structure ourselves the way that we do? How have we in the past?
Yeah.
Why are things the way they are? You know, I've always had like an inquisitive mind about like why is there a homeless person? Why does that exist? How does that work? You know, and like that sort of thing. And so
I feel
that
like I have a tweet of yours that kind of speaks to that.
While she finds it, we weren't going to do it. But for our Gen Z listeners out there,
Yep, you have to do it.
how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
is that a Gen Z question?
Just answer the question.
How often do I think about the Roman Empire? Not that often. I mean, the Roman Empire was cool. I like all the gladiator stuff for sure. I like to fight in the Colosseum someday.
I'm sure you would. That's an option, right?
No,
Well, Conor McGregor, or not Conor McGregor, what's his face? Musk and
Oh yeah,
what's his
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg were allegedly supposed to fight in the Coliseum.
that was rumored for a while.
Would be insane.
The reason that we're asking you how often do you think about the Roman Empire, I thought maybe you would have heard about it from your students by now, but there is a TikTok trend at the moment where women are asking their partners how often they think about the Roman Empire. And 99% of them say at either daily or at least once a week.
Like the men are saying that.
Yes.
I asked my boyfriend, and he said every single day, and then said it like as soon as we had enough cats, we would like ride into Carthage and take over. Like they couldn't do the last time.
My fiance said at least once a week. I think about the aqueducts all the time.
I can see that.
Yeah. Amazing. So I guess my final question for you, because you did, well, two questions related to you becoming a coach. My fiance is definitely a purpose seeker and feels a bit aimless when he was in the, he went to military school, then he went to West Point, then he went to the Army. Now he's not in the Army, and that can really devastate a person. And I have really encouraged him, you know, when people are going through something like that or seeking a purpose, it's generally good to go out and help someone else. Did you find A, to sort of also be a purpose seeking individual, and B, did you find that coaching helped?
Oh yeah, I always felt like the sport of wrestling saved my life. Like I don't think even after all the great adoption story, my great family, like I don't think I would have made it out of high school had I not found a reason to want to be there. And so I knew I was going to coach after I graduated from college. Like I'm definitely going to try to give this to someone else. And then teaching, I majored in history, and so I was happy to teach history. And then I actually became more invested in my academic and learning after college. You know, I know a lot more today than I did after I graduated college about social science and a lot of things, you know. And so, but yeah, I see what you're saying, and I definitely my life, like I didn't become a teacher for the money, so you know, it's definitely purpose driven and trying to. I think that when you look at the world, at least the way I look at the world, and like all the problems that exist, and you're like, I can't change everything. Like I can't. Like I wish I could, but I can't change it all. But what could I do in my own little community, in my own little bubble? It's like I could impact some lives in a positive way, and like that's gonna have a trickle down effect, you know. And like even if it's like one or two kids' lives that I change a year, like actually change the trajectory of their life, like that's like if I do this shit for 30 years, that's like 60 kids. That's only if I did two, you know. What if I'm doing 5 or 6, you know?
And we thought he wasn't good at mathematics.
I'm not.
I love that. I think that's so important. There was a quote that my grandpa used to say, and it was, God damn it, really losing it at the end here. Life is mattered only by the impact that it has on other lives. Something like that.
Yeah.
which it sounds like you take super to heart. How has everything that you've gone through affected your or inspired or directed your own parenting?
I've definitely, I think I'm very deliberate. I try to be very deliberate in how I parent and how I behave. And like lately, I've just been on this kick where I'm like, I need to be present. I need to be present. I need to be present. And that means putting my phone in the other room. And that means not thinking about other shit, but just like playing with them. And some of that's natural, but some of that's like very like deliberate and like it takes effort. And but then you like build your relationship. You see your relationship blossoming as a result of your efforts, and you're like, oh shit, I just need to keep doing this, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Cody, thank you for joining us today. You've been a great interview. We were definitely the most nervous that we've ever been coming into an interview. So sorry if we were a little scattered at the beginning, but I think it would be perfect to end with you tweeted 30 years ago today. My brother and I got adopted and moved from Oklahoma to California. It changed the trajectory of my life for the better. Knowing myself, I don't think I would have made it without a stable environment to grow up in. I'll forever be grateful to my parents. And I think that's really, I think ultimately we've loved to have you here, but they're the stars of this show for sure. It's been really wonderful to hear about them and the impact they've had on you and how you've showed up for each other. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a very different podcast than I've ever been on. So
I
it's
have
been
a
fun though.
question. I have a
What's up?
question. I told you I was going to ask the question. I literally told you. That's your gaming headset, right?
Oh, we'll be all
I got this headset 2 days ago for my birthday. My little brother bought it for me, and he sent it to me in the mail. And because I always mess with him, and I say I'm not a dork. I'm not gonna wear a headset when I game with you. I'm just not gonna do it. And then I put this bad boy
And now
on
you're
2 days
here.
ago.
And here you are.
So I read a tweet of yours about playing the UFC video game. And I ran immediately to, and I texted Ricky and I said, I don't know why I think this is so funny that a fighter plays this UFC video game. And I ran up to my boyfriend and I said, is it typical? Because he's a gamer. I was like, do you think it's typical for athletes to play the game of the sport that they are in? And he said, oh my God, absolutely. I'm sure they're learning more about the sport that they love. So first question is, do you think it's typical? Do you think football players are playing Madden, soccer players are playing FIFA, other UFC fighters are playing UFC video games? Is this a normal thing?
I think it's probably more common than people think, you know? Like, but what's funny is it's the only game I play.
He's a fixated one. Okay, so only game you play. Do you find yourself learning anything about the sport by playing the video game?
Max Holloway said on the Joe Rogan podcast that he learns from the game.
Oh, well, I'm sure that's exactly where Luke got it from.
And I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, but there is some like, I guess I do like try to fight like I want to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I sound like a complete idiot if I say I learned from a video game.
I mean,
Someone else said it.
Exactly.
If you were a character in the game, would you play your own character?
I don't think so. I probably would have the worst attributes.
Oh, to try to like overcome. I love it. I had to ask.
I feel like you could have asked that once we stopped the recording.
I think it should be in the recording.
Could you respond as though you were responding to?
Oh, well, you didn't have a question mark at the end.
No, I just want him to respond with what he thought about being on the pod. He said, "Thank you for having me. This is big. Could you pick up there? And I'll reorder this somehow."
Sure. I had a really good time talking to you guys. Thanks for making it easy on me. I guarantee you more nervous than you were. So I was definitely pacing around and telling my wife, tonight's the night I got to do that podcast. Tonight's the night I got to do that. It's about adoption. And so I was very nervous, and I did not cancel. My cancellation had nothing to do with that. I was legitimately like at the doctor and was like, I don't think it's a good idea for me to do this podcast tonight. But I did have a sigh of relief when it didn't happen the night it happened, because I was like definitely nervous about it. So thank you guys for making it easy on me.
Of course. Hopefully you
so much.
ultimately ended up enjoying yourself.
I did. It was a good conversation. I appreciated it.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Cody. We're so grateful to have you, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Cody Gibson, what a renegade.
A renegade?
He is so exceptional. Kendall, I know that you actually weren't there for the interview, which we were sad about.
I know, it was so cool to be able to listen to the podcast as if I were just like a normal
As a
audience
listener, yeah.
listener person.
Audience listener person.
So that was really cool. And I also just the people that we've gotten to talk to on this podcast, just like the vulnerability that they show, and especially Cody being an MMA fighter, they're supposed to be, or they are, these like macho dudes, and just coming on here and especially having been uncomfortable sharing his story, having that vulnerability means a lot that he was willing to do that for us. And I know he said that some MMA fighters do bring their aggression, violence home with them and tend to be maybe domestic abusers. But the ones that I have gotten to know in my life, I feel like they get their aggression out through their profession, and they tend to be really chill, cool, just great individuals. So it was nice to get to talk to somebody who is the same.
Yeah, talk about it like an athlete mindset. I think even what Ricky said, that because I think you said just he did it for us. I think he did it. It's incredible that he did it more for himself and to embrace something because he was uncomfortable doing it is super admirable. I also just want to add that it was such a fun interview. Kendall, you weren't there. Ricky and I blacked out for like the first part of it. We were so nervous.
Yeah, something we probably should have said in the intro.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys heard it, but for the first 20 minutes, I mean,
I was like, I don't know if I'm going to say anything. So yeah, that was really fun to come into like a high stakes interview. And I forgot that we have a little bit of the nervous blackout gene. But I think that I'm such a I run on like kind of a high frequency. So to see him because you're right, he is so level headed to the point where I was, you know me, I was getting anxious, very measured. I was getting anxious because I was like, oh my God, because his energy level is very even keeled, but his delivery, he's hysterical. I think he's very intellectual, and just God love him, the way that he talks about his family and the way that he talks about his brothers I'm getting goosebumps right now. So incredibly touching. He has such a big heart. And then I love like someone like that, and then someone that has that and has that really kind of feisty shithead side to him as well. It would just made for a really dynamic, fun, interesting interview. And his story is incredible. And I strive, once again, someone that we interview that I look up to and would strive to be more like in my everyday life. So grateful to have had him on.
yeah, I know that we've proclaimed several favorite guests, but he was definitely one of my favorite guests for the season. And there was a little bit of maybe he'll be flattered to hear it was a little bit of a case of being starstruck. But he is so intellectual, but he is so deadpan and hilarious. And he delivered some of my favorite zingers on the season. And it was always about family.
Yes.
The reverence that he has for his adoptive parents, for his brothers, for his wife, and for his kids, that family unit is like his everything. And he did not shy away from anything. And just showed the fuck up and you didn't know that was what was happening at the time because he was so nerve-wrackingly calm. But I think what you said, Jules, about us being really anxious, and especially because we do operate on high frequency. I mean, even Kendall makes us anxious because she operates on a lower frequency. You would notice probably if it made it in that our interview cut off really abruptly.
Oh my God.
And we thought, because we'll typically, we'll say goodbye to the guest on the StreamYard. And then we say, hold on 1 second. We hold up a finger so that we can like debrief with them after. And he just fucking bounced. And we were so mortified and nervous about it. And then I opened my Instagram and he had messaged me showing a little bit of his anxious side too. His computer or phone died that very moment.
Right at literally the exact moment.
Oh my gosh.
And he messaged us to be like, oh my gosh, it probably seems like I just got off without
I saw you
saying
holding
goodbye.
up a finger.
I'm so sorry about that. It was such an honor. And he really appreciated the way that we showed up for him as well, which meant a lot to us. And then, just to hear the things that he's doing in his teaching, the way that he kind of brings his life lessons into his students' lives, and his constant seeking of purpose.
Yes.
Was so beautiful. A beautiful interview. I couldn't be happier with that being our series finale.
And before we get into really saying goodbye, do you know anything about his upcoming anything?
He just had a Sports Illustrated article published yesterday that I have bookmarked to read, but it says that it's more about his upcoming fights.
Okay.
So the thing about The Ultimate Fighter is you typically have to win. And that means that you get to come back into the UFC because he was fighting for the veterans, which means that he had been in the UFC and then they dropped him. He was extended a contract as well because people blew Dana White up and said, you have to bring him back. So he has undergone some injuries. He is prone. So to see that he probably has a really promising future ahead of him in the UFC is really exciting. So Cody, thank you so much. We will be watching. We will be rooting for you and you'll get Katona sometime.
Yes. Well, you guys, I'm a little bit emotional. I guess this is going to be our final goodbye. And again, I know we've beat it to death, but this has just been absolutely incredible. I love you both so much. And I think that in lieu of our traditional sign off, we're going to be signing off a little bit differently today. This was our pregame ritual. This has been something that we've been doing our entire lives. It's always something that we've done behind the scenes, but today it is going to be our little treat and final goodbye to you all. Thank you so much. Thank you to every single guest that we've had this season. Thank you to every single listener, every single commenter. We love you guys and we're blessing you with this.
Thank you all so much. We love you.
We love you guys. Thank you.
Oh, the shame of the polar bear that feeds the water. No wonder we are shunned by our fellow bears. Woe is us. See you never. Bye.
Bye.
I
It's
have
been
a
fun though.
question. I have a
What's up?
question. I told you I was going to ask the question. I literally told you. That's your gaming headset, right?
Oh, we'll be
I got this headset 2 days ago for my birthday. My little brother bought it for me, and
Aw.
he sent it to me in the mail. And because I always mess with him, and I say I'm not a dork. I'm not gonna wear a headset when I game with you. I'm just not gonna do it. And then I put this bad boy
And now
on
you're
2 days
here.
ago.
And here you are.
So I read a tweet of yours about playing the UFC video game. And I ran immediately to, and I texted Ricky and I said, I don't know why I think this is so funny that a fighter plays this UFC video game. And I ran up to my boyfriend and I said, is it typical? Because he's a gamer. I was like, do you think it's typical for athletes to play the game of the sport that they are in? And he said, oh my God, absolutely. And I'm sure they're learning more about the sport that they love. So first question is, do you think it's typical? Do you think football players are playing Madden, soccer players are playing FIFA, other UFC fighters are playing UFC video games? Is this a normal thing?
I think it's probably more common than people think, Like, but what's funny is it's the only game I play.
He's a fixated one. Okay, so only game you play. Do you find yourself learning anything about the sport by playing the video game?
Max Holloway said on the Joe Rogan podcast that he learns from the game.
Oh, well,
And
I'm sure that's exactly where Luke got it from.
And I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, but there is some I guess I do try to fight like I want to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I sound like a complete idiot if I say I learned from a video game.
I mean,
Someone else said it.
Exactly.
If you were a character in the game, would you play your own character?
I don't think so. I probably would have the worst attributes.
Oh, to try to overcome. I love it. I had to ask.
I feel like you could have asked that once we stopped the recording.
I think it should be in the recording.
Could you respond as though you were responding to?
Oh, well, you didn't have a question mark at the end.
No, I just want him to respond with what he thought about being on the pod. He said, "Thank you for having me. This is big. Could you pick up there? And I'll reorder this somehow."
Sure.